morning. Thank you for registering and joining us today for the second webinar in our series, Legal Strategies for Women Leaders. My name is Amanda Dernovshek, and I'm an attorney here at Foster Swift, and I'm a member of our business and tax group. Our first webinar in this series was held on April 9th, and in that webinar, I reviewed the qualifications to become a women-owned business and how to obtain the women-owned business certification through the Small Business Administration. This is the second of 4 sessions scheduled for this year. Each session will provide ample time for participants to ask questions, discuss legal opportunities, and problem-solve challenges that women leaders face. If you have questions during today's presentation, please use the Q&A feature. This session is being recorded, and we will email you a link following the program, along with answers to any of the questions that we did not have time to address today. We want to be respectful of your time, so we will limit the session to 30 minutes. And today's program is informational only and is not legal advice. In today's discussion, Attorney Mindi Johnson will discuss executive compensation options and negotiation. So with that, Mindi, I'll invite you to introduce yourself and we can get started.
Thanks, Amanda. Hello, everyone. I'm Mindi Johnson, one of the co-leaders of the business tax group here at the firm. My practice focuses primarily on employee benefits and executive compensation. With that said, I do have many clients that rely on me in a corporate counsel capacity. So I help them with business decisions, structuring compensation packages, and benefit plans to help meet the company's goals and reward the long-term employees that they have. I also focus on closely held businesses primarily and employee-owned businesses. But with that clientele, I also help with mergers and acquisition transactions. So a lot of business deals, as well as the upfront structuring of different benefit plans. One of the priorities I have at our firm too is being one of the leaders of our Women's Initiative program, which we really introduced pre-pandemic as a program for our female attorneys to advocate for each other and support each other so that we as women in a mainly male-dominated profession could find a way to get ahead and stay competitive. And I think that has made a natural transition to this type of program where we're hoping to accomplish a lot of the same goals in rewarding and educating, giving women business owners the tools that they need to succeed. So that's where this program today comes in. We're going to focus on executive compensation options for women executives and business leaders by starting out discussing why it's important for women to consider this type of benefit package, and then outline the different options that are available, and then close by providing some tips for negotiating those types of programs.
Perfect. That sounds great, Mindi. You hit on something that I wanted to start with is why is this topic important for women leaders now?
Well, first and foremost, we need to earn our own living, right? I am overwhelmed by all of the statistics out there related to female breadwinners. Interestingly, the Grand Rapids Business Journal about a year ago published an article that summarized the percentage of women breadwinners in metropolitan areas. Grand Rapids was one of the lowest percentages, interestingly. But it's not like it used to be 30, 40 years ago, where there weren't female breadwinners or dual income households. It's just the facts of life. We have careers, we need to earn a living. I think supplementing with that, the men are asking for these types of programs and compensation plans. So in order to remain competitive and realize our true value and potential, we need to be talking about the same sorts of things. So one of the goals of this program today is to talk about what some of those options are and get familiar with the lingo so that we can have those informed conversations. In addition, I think the media is giving us a step ahead by talking about these issues. Most recent American Bar Association journal publication that landed on my desk yesterday has an article about the women's soccer team and equal pay rights that they are pursuing. So it's definitely a topic of interest to many people. It's gaining traction and momentum, and I think gets us that much further ahead in broaching the topic in key conversations with the decision makers. I think we couple that sort of momentum with business concerns in attracting and retaining key personnel. So a lot of businesses are struggling and referring to the Great Resignation, losing key quality staff to competitors, or not being able to gain the staff that they need to really get ahead in business. And I think the businesses are seeing that as a key challenge, particularly in light of the fact that upper management personnel are leaving. They're getting to be retirement age and they're ready to sail off into the sunset. So it's coupling the idea of getting key people on board for a succession planning purpose and making sure that there is enough incentive for leaders, and in particular, female executive leaders, to stay with the company and really commit and see the company succeed.
Right. So I think kind of going in line with what you're talking about, we need to continue these conversations, and women need to be asking because men are asking for these things. But how can an executive really approach their company about this topic?
Well, I think it's going to be very fact specific depending on the female leader and the executive role that she has with the company. So we all have different positions and we all report to different people. We might report to the officers of the company. We might be an officer of the company, so we report to the board of directors, or maybe we sit on the board, so we report to shareholders. And I think the strategy for even broaching the topic and having the conversation is going to differ depending on the role that you have with the company. I think the role and unique position you have with the company also provides you with additional information that you can use to your benefit, both in helping the company succeed, but also helping yourself succeed. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In pursuing these types of conversations, I appreciate that everyone has their own level of comfort with salary negotiations and introducing compensation related topics. But one thing I really like to do is try to structure a proposal as a win-win situation for both the company and the executive. So we go in by focusing on attaining both the business goals while attaining our own personal goals through the compensation package as well. So some of the business goals that we routinely see are recruiting and retaining key personnel. So making sure we have the right employees on board and rewarding them according to the benefits that they desire so that they'll stay with us. I think there is also a level of protection of the company at that point, and making sure that we can keep those people so that they don't go off to a competitor. We're seeing a lot of transition in upper professional staff, changing different firms, going to competitors based on specific compensation packages, because one firm is offering more by way of taxable compensation or more lucrative benefits than another. And I think the pandemic has really accelerated that sort of thinking because of the remote work capability and the ability to transition from one business to the next. We don't have the same type of business structure and longevity and tenure as we used to have 30 or 40 years ago. So it's going to be important for businesses to strongly consider what additional incentives they can provide to an executive to keep them there. And really incentivize the professionals to make sure that the business succeeds. There are a whole host of different benefit options that we'll get to in just a minute that talk about this type of win-win strategy, where an executive's compensation or benefit package will increase significantly in conjunction with the business profits increasing significantly. So by structuring that type of arrangement, when the business begins to succeed more financially, the executive will as well. And that takes us to the executive goals. What are you trying to get out of your compensation package? From me, as an attorney, I always like to be very fair. It's the rule of the law. So I don't think I'm alone in the fact that women want to be paid fairly for the work they do. They want to receive compensation that's comparable to that received by their male counterparts. So just having an understanding and knowledge of what is fair and what other people are receiving is going to be the first step in determining whether you're going to be satisfied with your compensation package. I think another thing to consider as a goal for an individual executive is to find out which benefits are going to be the most meaningful. So it could be deferred executive compensation retirement benefits. It could be some type of welfare benefit, just depending on the structure of your family and the challenges that you may have in your life individually, to find out what makes the most difference for you. And so there are a lot of tools that can be used to create that type of win-win strategy.
I'm thinking back on a lot of the conversations that we've had with our clients and just reflecting on both the business goals and the executive goals. And I think it's really surprising because businesses do want to make their executives happy. They want to keep them there, and they do have their executives' best interests in mind when we're designing executive compensation plans. Can you tell us like what options there are for executive compensation and what things we've helped clients to do?
Absolutely. So I'm going to focus on really 4 key components of an executive compensation package. And some of these components may come in with regard to an executive's compensation package, and some may not. It just depends, again, on the goals of the business and the goals of that key executive. So the first is taxable compensation. I always think back to the Jerry Maguire movie where we have the agent who's working with the athlete, and he says, "Show me the money." That's what we're talking about here. The taxable compensation that's paid year over year. A lot of people are transitioning from firm to firm or business to business because they're receiving $10,000 more in salary or X dollars per hour more of additional benefits. I think that taxable compensation can certainly be an incentive, but not the only one. And the downside with compensation is that it's paid in a particular year. It's taxable to you in that year. Depending on your unique tax bracket, that may or may not be a real incentive to have more taxable compensation. So there are other tax-free or tax-deferred options I want to speak about too. And these can all be used in connection with each other in developing a package that's unique to a specific person. So there are a number of other tax-deferred, tax-free fringe benefits that we always talk about with clients. They may include certain welfare benefits, like more lucrative health insurance plans. It could be education or tuition reimbursement or student loan repayment benefits, could be adoption assistance. More and more frequently, we're talking with employers about implementing retiree medical plans. So we've kind of gone back and forth on the retiree medical trend. It used to be back in the day when employers sponsored defined benefit pension plans, they would also have a retiree medical plan, so that once the retiree leaves the company, they could receive medical benefits for a certain period of time or even the remainder of their life. As we're seeing more and more expensive medical treatment and fewer options for retirees to obtain medical insurance independently besides Medicare, we are having these conversations with clients about developing programs to ensure that retiree medical coverage is covered for certain professionals. Then we get to the same types of retirement benefits on the qualified side when we're talking about 401k and profit sharing plans. Your traditional retirement packages for for-profit businesses. With those types of benefits, there are certain restrictions and limits imposed by ERISA and the Internal Revenue Code. Those restrictions can, I think, dampen the full extent of compensation that an executive may be entitled to earn. There are specific provisions related to eligibility and who may participate in those plans. In general, they have to be offered to all employees of the workforce. There are specific vesting requirements and trust requirements to ensure those benefits are paid when due, and a number of different non-discrimination tests to ensure that highly compensated employees aren't treated more favorably than the rank and file employees. So that can be somewhat of a deterrent in really encouraging and incentivizing employees For example, based on some of the IRS limits, many people know that anyone under age 50 can only defer $20,500 each year. At least that's the 2022 limit into their 401k plan. And that employer contributions are based on salary only up to $305,000. So any taxable compensation that an executive earns over and above the $305,000 cannot be compensated through a profit sharing contribution in the 401k plan. Similarly, all contributions that are allocated to a participant under a defined contribution plan, like a 401k or profit sharing plan, is limited to $61,000 per year. So that's the full extent of a qualified retirement benefit that can be allocated to a particular individual, at least in 2022. And that $61,000 includes both the employee deferrals and employer contributions. So there are certain limits that apply when you have those qualified retirement benefits, but they are protected. And there are some ways to become more creative with the different allocation formulas in your profit sharing plans as well. So what we typically see is that a profit sharing contribution made by an employer is allocated among all employees, pro rata based on compensation. So effectively, those who earn more would receive a higher allocation, subject to the IRS limits we just talked about. But there are other ways to create a more lucrative allocation formula that benefits those highly compensated employees a little bit more than just the pro rata compensation model. Those have to be tested separately and stay within certain parameters identified by the IRS, but have been entertained by a number of our clients to achieve their goals. So the fourth type of option we routinely talk about with companies and their executives really relate to non-qualified plans. So these are plans that don't have the same types of rules and restrictions as the 401k plan, like we talked about. Oftentimes there are exemptions to ERISA and certain tax rules so that a smaller proportion of the company can receive these benefits, which aren't subject to those same compensation and benefit restrictions and amounts that we just mentioned under the 401k plan. But the flip side of that is you don't get as much protection as you would under an ERISA subject plan either. So you do have to weigh the pros and cons about that, but I do see non-qualified plan options being taken advantage of by many, many businesses to reward those executive leaders for the hard work that they do.
So I hear you saying that the non-qualified plans are more lucrative, but can be a little more risky. So when does a non-qualified plan make sense for an executive and a business to really pursue that option?
Yeah, so I'm going to focus just primarily today on for-profit businesses. There may be other options available for nonprofits or even municipalities. But a non-qualified plan really focuses on providing benefits to a select group of management or highly compensated employees. They're often referred to as the top hat group, which is a term that's taken from an IRS private letter ruling that approved these types of transactions and programs. And so these types of plans are really limited to highly compensated participants, those with real managerial responsibilities and effectively the ability to negotiate their own salaries. But the goals that both the executive and the company have in implementing such a program really focus on long-term retention of those executives and providing incentives for them to perform. So again, when the business does well, then that executive does well also. There is also security for the company that's often built into those types of programs with fairly strong non-competition and non-solicitation provisions to ensure that when the company pays that benefit, they're going to get the benefit of the bargain and they won't lose that employee to a competitor. But at the same time, while those benefits can be much more significant than under a typical qualified plan, there's a lot of risk that the executive may take on as well. The primary risk is that those benefits remains subject to the company's creditors. So if the company goes bankrupt, there's a strong possibility that those benefits would not be paid. That's one of the key differences between those ERISA qualified plans and the non-qualified plans. That said, the company executive can discuss different types of funding assurances. There are certain types of trust that can be implemented to ensure that those benefits will be paid, but again, they remain subject to the company's creditors. One other risk that an executive needs to be aware of is that sometimes taxation of the benefits that are provided under a non-qualified plan does not occur at the same time of payment. So the benefit may effectively be taxed before the executive receives the money. So there has to be some pre-planning to ensure that there are sufficient funds to cover those taxes if and when those benefits are vesting. So that the executive is not out of luck when that tax bill comes.
So it seems like there are lots of options and there are lots of tax implications with all of the non-qualified plans. Can you tell us about some of the trends that you're seeing with respect to non-qualified plans?
Yeah, so I'm seeing 5 specific types of non-qualified plans being asked about most often. The first is an excess benefit plan. So that's a non-qualified plan that effectively makes an executive whole for the 401k contributions that she was not able to receive because of the IRS limits. So for example, if the profit sharing contribution is only based on $305,000 of that executive's salary, and she earned $350,000, for example, then that delta of $40,000 would be compensated in a non-qualified plan. Those excess benefit plans also allow the executive to defer an amount in excess of the $20,500 that a 401k plan is subject to. So again, those types of plans really make whole that participant for any deficiency that she experienced under the 401k plan. Mm-hmm. A second type of plan is a supplemental retirement plan, supplemental executive retirement plan, a SERP. And that is a type of plan that provides generally a cash benefit at retirement. So there can be a whole flurry of different design provisions that relate to vesting, when those benefits are due, what the amount of that benefit may be. And the primary goal of that is to retain that executive for a period of time up through retirement and then provide a lucrative tax deferred benefit to them at that time. 2 other types of plans are really focused on more of an equity incentive plan. So these can be phantom stock plans or stock appreciation rights plans. And they are benefits that are tied to the success or value of the company as that value appreciates from year to year. So they're typically designed with specific performance goals in mind for the executive to attain. And when she attains those goals, then the company benefits as well. So the benefits are directly tied to the success of the business. And then there are other short-term or long-term incentive plans that provide typically an earlier payment based on certain performance incentives. So we typically see benefit not delayed until retirement under those incentive plans, but maybe for the next 3 to 5 years. And depending on the executive that you want to reward with these types of benefits, that type of plan may be the best fit.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any tips for negotiating a new compensation package? If today's information has kind of sparked an idea or there's something you're interested in negotiating with your company, what are some tips that you would tell our listeners today?
Yes, so I have 4. So first, always the first place to start is define your goals. What's important to you in your current position? Is this a position that you see yourself holding for a long period of time? Is it a company that you fit well with? Do you want to stay there, or does it look like the grass is a little greener? I think you have to consider security and your longevity of tenure when considering those types of issues. Second thing is, in addressing your goals, what's the level of risk that you're willing to accept? We talked about certain non-qualified plans being subject to the company's creditors. Is that a risk you're willing to take? Or does some type of more secure promised benefit, like that provided under a qualified plan, really sit better with you. And then third, in identifying your goals, what options are the most attractive? Do you have serious concerns about healthcare expenses in retirement? Does a retiree medical plan sound a little bit better than deferred compensation or a retirement plan? What about current fringe benefits? Like I said, student repayment or adoption assistance, other tax-free incentives right now at this point in your career may outweigh any desire for more lucrative benefits at retirement. Second step, do your research. What are the business's goals and financial capabilities in providing a benefit plan? Generally, female executives are privy to a lot of the financial information and identification of priorities within the company. So making sure you know what types of programs the company would even consider is one of the first places to start. And then you move on to consider who you should approach with regard to this type of program. It may relate directly to who you report to. Maybe you are kind of the be all end all. At that point, maybe talk with the board of directors or shareholders about structuring kind of that win-win package to really secure your spot with the company and secure the profitability of the company for the next few years. And then consider timing as well. I think natural times to consider having this type of discussion is when you land a big client or complete a big transaction or receive really good quality of earnings or financial reports for a company quarter. When you're kind of on the upslope and everyone's excited about how well the business is doing, it's easier to have these conversations about rewarding people for the good work that's done. Third step, develop and vet your proposal. So definitely walk in with a plan. What do you want? What are you proposing to the company? I think that proposal is going to be based on a number of different factors, but a couple of suggestions I have are to ask what other people are receiving. Ask around to your group of friends, other female business leader groups, other resources that you have to find out what a consistent and comparable compensation package is. Not only for a woman in your position, but also a man. We want to be compensated fairly. Consider what other offers you may be receiving. I don't think it's unheard of for people to even blink an eye when they receive calls from headhunters anymore. It happens all the time. What types of compensation packages may be offered at competitors' businesses? And then also consider whether you should engage outside resources to help you develop this proposal or really vet your options. And that can be done through some compensation consultant, through attorneys who negotiate these types of programs and plans all the time. It might be really helpful just to have that third independent party's input to understand that what you're asking for is not out of the ballpark. And then fourth step is to ask. Ask for what you want. Identify your goals, support it, be direct, and see what the company says. If you are a strong leader, they're going to want to keep you. And there might be some negotiation about what that proposal ends up looking like, but you'll never know unless you do that.
Mindi, thank you so much for your expertise and your willingness to talk about this topic today. I think it's been really interesting, and it makes me excited to think about people who are here taking your advice and going out and negotiating for themselves. So thank you. I also want to thank you, all of you, for attending this second session of Legal Strategies for Women Leaders. As I mentioned, we will be sending you a link to the recording of today's presentation and a short survey. We value your feedback, and we look forward to providing you with some more valuable programming later this year. We have two more tentative topics for the remainder of 2022. The first one is protecting your business assets and the importance of a prenuptial agreement to protect your business. And that will be with two attorneys from the firm, Jackie Dupler and Andrea Badalucco, on August 9th. And then on October 4th, we're going to have a session with attorney Amanda Afton Martin, and she's going to be talking about effective estate planning and planning opportunities. So as we wrap up, the screen should be showing a list of the firm's women attorneys and their practice areas and contact information. This will also be included in the link that we send to you if you don't see it right now. And as women professionals, we really value the opportunity to network and to do business with other women. So please consider this an open invitation to reach out to Mindi or myself. And we look forward to seeing you on August 9th. Thank you.
Thank you.